Nathan Graves and Hugh Baldwin follow their master into an eerie castle to stop some lady from resurrecting the Dark Lord himself, Dracula. But they're too late as Drac literally returns 5 seconds before the trio enter the room. Though not at his full strength, Drac still has enough power to destroy the floor, dropping Nathan and Hugh down a long tunnel and into catacombs. Somehow suffering 0 fall damage, the two decide to split up, as is the custom in horror media, in order to rescue their master before he gets sacrificed to restore Drac's full power. I hate Castlevania Circle of the Moon. I didn't play it back when it came out in 2001, but I'm sure I'd have hated it then too. It's an RNG mess with rolls on par with current day gacha games. Nobody knew it back then, but the randomness of enemy drops in this game was an ominous precursor to Konami's future business model of... I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's refocus and break down this attempt at a portable Metroidvania. Circle takes a huge step backward and puts you back into the stomping boots of a vampire killer named Nathan Graves. And ironically, he sucks harder than any vampire could. The problem is the devs made a Metroidvania style Castlevania, but gave you the movement limitations of a traditional Castlevania. I understand Circle is Symphony of the Night's direct successor, and that the fluid combat and movements of a Dhampir would pale in comparison to the hunk of meat that is a vampire killer. But Nathan feels like he's carrying a bathtub or something. He's slow, there's no dodging mechanic, and his whip only attacks forward. I get that this harkens back to the traditional Castlevania formula, but it absolutely doesn't translate well to a Metroidvania. Add in the ridiculous knockback and the series' signature trolling that is its enemy placement, and you're in for a frustrating ride as enemies spawn at the apex of your jumps, smacking you and sending you down to the bottom to start again. It's like the game's prologue foreshadowed this or something. But I haven't even touched on the most frustrating parts. I can handle bullcrap enemy placement. What I hate are bullcrap bosses and difficulty spikes. Specifically, the twin zombie dragons. Up until I got to those jerks, I hadn't had any real issues. But boy, as soon as I walked into that boss room, I was toast and didn't even know it. It's a frustrating game of tennis, and you're the ball. Each head moves sporadically and would constantly move out of attack range by lifting their heads too high for me to whip. I'd jump, but if it wasn't pixel perfect, I'd take contact damage and fly back. Even with the axe sub-weapon, it wasn't enough because I'd run out of hearts. And it wasn't like I didn't have enough hearts, these dudes were just tanky. I only won because I cheesed the fight by equipping cards that let me heal gradually if I stood still long enough. And let's be real, does cheesing something really feel like a victory? I guess a win's a win. Let's talk about Circle's gimmick, the dual setup system. It's actually pretty cool, but also not. You get cards that you can mix and match in order to do magic spells, like get a flame whip, or summon monsters, or do the aforementioned healing spells. The variety of magic you can use is kind of staggering, and I actually thought it was awesome. However, it's all dragged down by what I alluded to in this video's intro, RNG. You must obtain these cards to use magic, and they can only be dropped by enemies, and the drop rates are atrocious. Like, some drops are as low as 0.6%. What does this mean? It means two things. One, I had the world's worst luck and didn't have any cards by the time I got to the twin zombie dragons, thus a reckoning ensued. And two, I had to grind a specific enemy for an hour to get the stupid Thunderbird card. And if you're an impatient person like me, this is excruciating. So, what do these points culminate to? Essentially, because mid to late game bosses are designed to be defeated with magic, meaning they're tanky and unfair without magic, and obtaining cards from magic is rare and obscure, I was forced to play the game with a wiki. This is an absolute defeat in my book. A truly good Metroidvania should not make me feel I have to use a wiki to enjoy it. But I just couldn't beat these freaking dragons. I used the wiki to find the most broken spells in the game so I could just finish it. Beyond the combat, the abilities are pretty standard fare for a Metroidvania. Dash, double jump, wall jump, a tackle to break certain blocks, a ring to push heavy blocks, high jump, and a thing that makes traversing a dangerous area less dangerous. Specifically, a necklace that cleanses the sewers. All the abilities work to open up the map, but they don't really add much else. Combat still sucks once you're fully upgraded. I never got lost in Circle. Each time I got an ability, I pretty much knew where to use it. The game does a pretty good job of opening up early once you exit the catacombs, so I was able to find all kinds of dead ends where I knew I needed something in order to progress. I like that in a Metroidvania. Unfortunately, exploration isn't very rewarding in this game. There's only so many times I can find an HP or MP or heart max up before my excitement starts to wane. There were times near the end when I didn't even care to go down certain passages or do certain box puzzles because I knew I was only going to get some stat increasing garbage. Good equipment, healing items, and cards are all locked behind enemy drops. Sure, you have to explore to find special enemies, but I was so over that. Imagine, I go out of my way and find an enemy that could possibly drop a card that'll give me an amazing spell, but first I have to kill it for an hour. How does that sound fun? Maybe if you're obsessive, but my impatience is far stronger than my neurosis. And it didn't help that the fast travel system relied on teleport rooms that were typically too far from anything interesting and never near a save point. If they placed some teleports on the fringes of the map instead of localizing them all near the center, and placed one in every biome, fast travel would have been better. The game's atmosphere and overall presentation is nothing to write home about, but I'm not about to wreck a 2 decades old game on a limiting piece of hardware for not having cutting edge graphics. My only critique would be its color palette. There's a lot of earth tones making everything seem dreary and drab. The art direction is very Castlevania, meaning it's all over the place on enemy designs, but the environments actually have a sense of cohesion and the music is, there. Overall, what's here works. Nothing egregious, but nothing outstanding. The narrative, much like the atmosphere, is bland. It's enough to get things rolling, but not enough to keep you interested. Your buddy Hugh turns against you because he has dark feelings in his heart that Drac manipulates, a trope I actually adore. You resolve this issue with whips to the face, then you defeat Drac and save your master. The trio watch the castle crumble, roll credits. No true endings here. You beat it and get what you get. It's disappointing, but remember, this was the essence of Metroidvanias. Tropes hadn't been firmly established yet, so there's bound to be some growing pains. There's some post-game content around naming your file certain things like Fireball, but I didn't bother with it. I also didn't bother with the game's optional battle arena. Stepping inside drains you of all your MP, leaving you with only your whip and your wits. And considering I hated the combat in the game, I noped the hell out of there. At the end of the day, I can't recommend Circle of the Moon. It's too hard for all the wrong reasons. The controls feel terrible, exploration gets stale and is typically unrewarding, the randomness of everything from equipment to healing items to cards necessary to compete against late game bosses, and the bland atmosphere and story leaves this game with little appeal. I get it if you have nostalgia for this game. Maybe it was the only game you had on the GBA, so you forgave its shortcomings. If that's the case, then I'm happy for you. Keep playing what you love. For everyone else, unless you absolutely must slay Dracula in all of his iterations, it's probably okay for you to skip this outing.